This is Mike Tomano's Wild and Free, the radio campfire that celebrates the natural high in the great outdoors. Joining us on the program now is Bill Vaznis, author of the books Successful Black Bear Hunting, Still Hunting for Trophy Whitetails, and 500 Whitetail Deer Hunting Tips. Bill's expert articles also frequently appear in American Hunter Magazine, Deer and Deer Hunting Magazine, Peterson's Hunting, and Bow Hunting World magazines. Welcome to the program, Bill Vaznis.
Hey, thanks for that great introduction. You've been doing some homework.
I do a lot of homework. You are known as the bear man. Everybody that talks about bear hunting, all the enthusiasts that I know that get out and chase black bears, say Bill's the guy to talk to, so I'm glad to be talking to you.
Well, with that introduction, my head's about half the size of my living room. Let me open up the door and let some of it out.
Well, give us the story, Bill, of how you first fell in love with the great outdoors. A little background.
Well, my father was an outdoor writer for a local newspaper. And we grew up on 40 acres set inside 6 square miles in western Massachusetts. It was loaded with game, and the house had a huge pond behind it with 3 brooks emanating from the pond. And they were all loaded with trout. So if we were good, we could fish. And the only time I could play hooky from school was to go fishing. And this is not a brag, I probably caught more trout by first grade than most guys catch in a lifetime. The trout, it just loaded with trout in our area. And plus we had other rivers, the Manhan River, the Deerfield River, Westfield River, and a lot of brooks, just loaded with trout. So me and my brothers, our pastime was walking the brooks looking for fish, looking for deer sign, looking for other stuff like raccoons and bear tracks. Great way to grow up.
Yes, it is. And it does take hold of a kid. There's a magic that doesn't leave.
Oh, you're right. You know, it gets inside your soul. You know, we were all born to hunt.
Right.
We're all born to fish. That's how man evolved in part. So, yeah, you're right. It gets into your soul, it gets into your heart, and that's all you can really think about. Other things play second fiddle to it.
I get as excited when I go squirrel hunting as I did the first time I ever did. As excited as the first time I ever did it when I get in my canoe and I'm going fishing. It's amazing.
Yeah, you're right. It sticks to you. It's what life is all about, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of other guys too that like to hunt and fish.
Yeah.
So where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Chicago. Oddly enough, it was we didn't have a lot of woods and water. And I grew up right on the edge of Chicago. There were still some factory fields, some industrial fields, and we would hunt rabbits there with our bows and arrows. And my father made it a point of taking the kids fishing and camping and hiking and hunting as often as we could. And we would take these road trips all the time up to Wisconsin or out to the forest preserves near my home. And it really took hold of me. And as I got older, I spent more and more time away from the city. And now I rarely go back to the city. So that's where I'm at. Tell us about your first bear hunt.
Oh, geez, I've seen bears when I was a kid. The first time I had a close encounter with a bear, 30 years ago. I was bow hunting deer in Pennsylvania, Potter County. And I don't hunt deer out of a tree stand. I still hunt with my bow and arrow. I sneak along through the woods and see if I can get a shot at one. Well, I was still hunting through this broken field, overgrown field in Potter County, and I heard a noise, and this black bear stood up right in front of me. I was in there feeding on the blueberries. And I could have hit her over the head with my bow. I was so close to her. And I remember looking at her eyes. She was as surprised as I was. And I thought, and the sun was just gleaming off her. She had a beautiful black coat, and her beady brown eyes were just staring at me. She had her paws askew, and it was a big woof when she stood up. And I looked down. I heard a noise, and I looked down. There were 3 little cubs between me and her running through the brush. And I thought, uh-oh, this is not good. She fell down on her all fours, or dropped to all fours, and ran to a nearby maple tree and scurried up the tree. I actually scared the dickens out of her. She roughed a couple of times, and I yelled at her, probably because I was a little scared, but to let her know that I was human. Here I am in full camouflage. My face has got covered with grease paint. She didn't know what the hell I was.
Right.
She got down from the tree after I yelled, and I heard her scurrying around, and I moved away from her and uphill. And I got my eyes peeled for. I could hear her woofing, and I could hear noise in the brush, which is, I assume, with these little 20-pound cubs. And finally, I broke into the clearing above the brush, and I saw her with the 3 cubs. She looked at me, stood up again, and then scurried up the hill on the edge of the brush line, and I did not see her again. That was my first close encounter with a black bear.
It was a magical experience, but also pretty lucky for you.
Yeah, usually, it's not a good thing to get to fool around with Mama and her cubs, and it's certainly not a good idea to try and walk in between them.
No.
I think because I was still hunting, I was going slowly and quietly. I got up upon her without her knowledge, and I frightened her. I startled her, and as long as I moved away and her cubs were safe, she left me alone. I think if I had stepped on one of the little critters and had to let out a ball, I would have had some trouble. But that didn't happen, and that was just, as you said, it was magical to get that close to a beautiful black bear. And like I said, I could have hit her over the head with my bow. I was so close to her. It's just, my gut is rolling right now just thinking about that.
He's reliving it, right? What's the biggest mistake that the novice bear hunter makes?
If you're bow hunting over bait, as was so popular in Canada, and you're looking for a trophy bear, you shoot at the first bear you see. I think that's the biggest mistake people make.
Impatience?
Yeah, they get impatient. It's hard, very hard to field judge the size of a bear. You've got to see a lot of them, and I've seen hundreds of them in the wild. I don't want to say thousands, but definitely hundreds. And it's still difficult for me to judge the weight of that bear. I talked to a bear trapper in northern Saskatchewan many years ago. He trapped bears for a living. And I asked him how he judged the size of a bear, how accurate was he. He said, well, if I can pick it up and put it in a wheelbarrow, I can tell you what it weighs. But if I can't pick it up, he says, my guess is as good as anybody's. The black fur doesn't leave any, word I'm looking for here. I'm a writer and I can't find a word.
Yeah.
The black fur, it gives them a roly-poly appearance, and you don't get any muscle tone or body. The body itself is actually hidden underneath this fur. The fur can be long, and they've got a lot of fat on them, and it rolls around, and it's just so hard to field judge their size. And when they're laying on the ground, it's even worse because everything just sort of settles down.
Now, what about the size of the head? Does that help, or is that just about age?
When you see enough bears, you look for the size of the head. A big boar, if you're looking for something 400 pounds or better, and that's a trophy bear in anybody's book, whether you take it with a bow, rifle, shotgun, or muzzleloader, or a pistol. A real mature bear has got a crease down the center of their head. They've also got a lot of scars on them from fighting, and they've got the no-neck appearance. They look like a linebacker for the Chicago Bears.
Okay.
Since you're in Chicago, if I were in New York, it'd be the New York Giants or the Jets.
They're stocky.
Patriots, but I'll use Chicago.
There you go.
They have no neck. They're like they've been working out year round for forever, and they walk with a pigeon-toed gait, and they walk with authority. They are the king of the woods. There's nothing that they're afraid of except for man, and even then, they're not so afraid of us at times.
Yeah.
But they walk with that authority. When you see one come in and his belly's dragging on the ground, or nearly on the ground, they got a big fanny on that pigeon-toed, no-neck appearance. You've got a big bear in front of you.
That's priceless information. See, I'll know that now. But I fear that I would be one of those guys that I tend to be impatient. I do it with deer all the time. I've shot does and then had a 12-point buck come underneath the stand 30 seconds later.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to shoot the first bear. You see, a lot of people get real scared when a bear comes in. If you're not familiar with them, and you have one walk underneath your stand, it can be a very spooky experience.
Yeah.
And guys will miss because they get bear fever, the equivalent of buck fever, and their legs will start popping around. They break out into a sweat, and they can't even hold on to the bow. I tell people, you don't have to shoot the first bear that comes in. Watch them. Just sit there and watch them. and you'll calm right down. And then when you feel comfortable with that bear around, then you can take a whack at him.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've done that with deer as well, where you see them and you just wait, get comfortable with them in your area, and calm yourself down before you even attempt to draw your bow.
So you don't have to shoot them.
Right.
You'll see him again.
Right.
You'll see him again. If you don't spook him off the bait, there's a good chance he'll come back in again.
Let's discuss the benefits and challenges of bear hunting methods: baiting, stalking, and using hounds.
Great. A lot of it depends on the weapon you choose. Bear hunting over bait with a bow and arrow is the most popular for archers. You can get a good look at the bear. You can size up the bear. You don't have to shoot him. You can just watch him, and that way you eliminate the possibility of shooting a sow with cubs, for example, which is not a good thing to do anywhere. It's the most exciting for bear hunters. It's very challenging. People think it's so easy you got a bear over bait like shooting fish in a barrel. Well, it's far from the truth. These critters are very, very smart, and especially once they've been hunted. And the big old boars, the big trophy bears, it's the males that generally reach trophy status. There's only a couple sows in the Pope and Young record book, for example. They get very, very smart. They live into their 30s and 40s, and they can figure you out on the bait. It's like trying to go after a trophy buck. Shooting a doe or a yearling buck is as different is different than shooting a trophy buck, a mature buck, a 3.5, 4.5, or 5.5-year-old deer. If you want to get those big bucks, you got to consider them a separate species, and it's the same with bears. If you want a trophy bear, a record book bear, a heavy bear, you've got to treat that as a separate and distinct species from a regular bear, from the sows and cubs and yearlings. They are super intelligent. You cannot get a white-tailed buck to ride a bicycle, but you can teach a bear to ride a bicycle.
See, there you go.
And a white-tailed buck will never circle around and come up behind you to see what the hell you are.
Right.
They're going to run. And they're not going to come back. A bear sees you. He will come in to see what you are. He will circle around and sneak in like a cat in the fog. Get right on top of you.
Isn't it amazing? 300, 400-pound beasts who make less noise than a mouse when they come into these baits.
Oh, exactly. They are so careful when they come in. They're so alert and so intelligent. They will circle around to get your wind. They can tell, if you visit a bait site, they can tell you're there with the route you came in or what tree you went up in on their first visit. One day I was hunting up in Quebec, and we had a bait site set up, and it was my first trip into the bait. It had been baited for some time, and I was the first hunter in there. And I heard a noise behind me. I looked up, and coming down the hill was a big black bear, 250, 300 pounds, a mature bear. And he was sniffing every leaf that I brushed up against, every tree that I went by, and sniffing the ground. And he knew what direction I came in, and he backtracked me to see where I came from. And then he worked himself right up to the tree I was in and looked up at the tree at me.
Wow.
Even though I was wearing rubber boots and tried to be as scent-free as possible, he figured me out. They have got a snaz on them it'll make a bloodhound cry.
Yeah. For anyone
that's over baits.
That's over baits.
Yeah, you can hunt them with bow or muzzleloader. Sitting on the ground with a muzzleloader 30 feet from the bait can be very exciting. I shot an average bear up in New Brunswick this spring with a muzzleloader, and I had several bears come in. I had another sow with 3 cubs come right in behind me within 8 yards of me. I'm sitting on the ground looking at the bait, and I hear a noise and turn around, and there's this sow. She woofed and grunted and sent the cubs right up a tree, which really excited me because I had no place to go. And finally, she backed off and woofed, and they came down. And then she turned around and walked within 20 yards of me.
Wow.
By hunting on the bait, and I had a 600-pounder come in, and I could not get a clean shot at him with my muzzleloader. I'm on the ground. There was only a fern between me and this big bear. But he was swinging his head back and forth, and he never turned broadside or a quartering away for any length of time. that would offer me a good, clean killing shot. Hunting on the ground over bait with a muzzleloader or with a bow is very exciting. I was up in Saskatchewan several years ago with Judd Cooney. He had a camp up there, and Judd and I sat on the ground to photograph bears. And these things would come in. We had them within 10 yards of us on the ground. And Judd got some great pictures of me quivering in front of him. He kept telling me, get closer, get closer, get closer. I turned around and says, you blankety blank. I'm not getting any closer.
What kind of pictures do you want to get here? Yeah.
Yeah. You want me to have the bear grab me by the neck and drag me off? He had a shotgun with him, and we could have shot one. We had tags with us, but sitting on the ground near a base station is a lot of fun. It's a lot of excitement, but I think you got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to tell when the bear is getting a little aggressive.
Yes.
And you got to know you're not going to turn up and start running because they have that predator-prey instinct, and there's a chance he could run you down.
It's amazing that hunters and wildlife experts, they understand that wild animals are wild. I recently finished a piece that talked about people like Timothy Treadwell, the grizzly man, Jeff Irwin, the crocodile hunter, even this woman that trains them at SeaWorld. These people end up getting killed by elephants or grizzly bears because they try to turn them into a Disney character. They try to take a wild beast and force it into a role as a cuddly toy, and they end up getting killed. It's only hunters and conservationists that understand wild animals are wild.
You're right. You're exactly right, and that's exactly what they do. That's why Treadwell got it. Irwin, I think, was more of an accident. He was still swimming on top of that stingray when it nailed him.
Yeah.
And people that do keep animals in activity, you're right. There was just a thing in a piece in the paper where a man who had raised a bear from a cub got killed. He was killed by the bear. They are, as you said, they're a wild animal, and they're nothing to fool around with. They're not a pet. They're not cuddly. They're not going to love you. You feed them. You want to pet them. Oh, I love them. They'll love me in return. They will not.
Yeah, this is not a dog or a cat. You're
That's
right. You're right.
They're a wild critter, and they're meant to be wild.
Amen. And so are we, right? A little bit.
That's right.
Let's talk about the books you've written, Bill. Successful Black Bear Hunting, of course, the Bible for black bear hunters. 500 White-tailed Deer Hunting Tips. Great book that offers deep insight to something that we can never learn enough about, the American white-tailed deer. And you wrote a book called Still Hunting for trophy whitetails. And still hunting is the most challenging method of hunting and oftentimes the most rewarding. But it's a difficult skill. I don't think anyone can ever master it. You can just improve on it.
That's right.
Can you describe this method and share some insight in what it means to be a still hunter?
Yeah. Still hunting with a bow is probably the most difficult way to tag a buck. It ranks right up there with tracking one down in the snow and shooting them with a rifle, which is a very popular method here in the Northeast and anywhere in snow country. I tracked several bucks down in the snow with my bow. I killed one several years ago. He didn't know I was behind him. I caught up to him during a snowstorm and shot him about 25 yards with my bow. I followed him most of the morning. But still hunting is it's the way the Indians hunted for 10,000 years. Humans still hunted with a bow and arrow. They set up some ambushes, some ground stands, and once in a while they may have found a tree to climb up into. But for the most part, we still hunted. And the success rate was about 5%. It wasn't until the portable tree stand became a popular item, mass-produced in the early 80s, did bow hunting really take off, and success rates soar in some places 30, 40% hunting out of a tree stand. Unfortunately, when you do that, you lose some of the innate ability that we have to sneak and peek through the woods, to crawl through the woods undetected, to become part of the outdoors. I tell people that if you hunt from a tree stand, you get above the buck's line of vision so he can't see you. Even unless he looks right up at you as he's going about his daily routine. He doesn't see you because you're hiding up in the clouds somewhere. And some people like to get 30, 40 feet up in the air. He's not likely to hear you because you're standing still. You quiet the tree stand down, you put carpet on it, you take all the shards of bark off the tree, you take all the squeaks out of the tree stand. He is not going to hear you because you're standing still and he can't see you. And the last thing you do is you get above him so much that you can get rid of the wind. He's not going to wind you. Sometimes the scent will drift right over the top of him. So you may as well take, if you're going to hunt out of a tree stand for deer, you may as well take some Vaseline and put it in the buck's nose because he's not going to smell you. You may as well put blinders on the deer like they do horses because he's not going to see you. And you may as well stuff cotton balls in his ears because he's not going to hear you. When you're hunting bucks out of a tree stand, you may as well do this to the deer. It's similar to, you may as well go out in a pasture and shoot a cow because you've taken all the things that make a white-tailed deer fantastic, his eyesight, his hearing, and his smell, you've taken them away from him. You've reduced him to a farmyard animal.
Well, you know, the defense.
That's my view on it. So now I get some.
No, that was very good. I'm sitting here and my controversial comment alert just went off. I'm like, here we go. Thank you, Bill. Very good. But you know what? But you're right. But we do try to put the odds in our favor so much, though, that we do get away from the actual hunting part. I get very bored in a tree stand after so many hours, and I like to walk around and look around. And then you start to still hunt. You start to figure out, I have to walk very slowly. I have to blend in with the shadows. I have to step over anything instead of stepping on it. And you really do become a better predator. It is funny, though. You mentioned with the advent of the tree stand, the defense mechanism of the deer has evolved. When I was a kid, they always said, deer never look up. Well, that's changed.
Yeah.
You know, now it's bred into their genes that they do look up all the time. Amazing stuff.
They have evolved. They have gotten a little bit smarter, and they do, as you said, they do look up, especially if they're in an area that's been hunted. They've encountered humans in trees. They see them get out of trees. They hear them clank around, and they'll sniff that stand later on. They'll find out where you are, and a big buck will avoid that area completely. He won't be around for a while. He's not going to challenge you for that territory, unlike a bear. A bear will challenge you for it.
Right, yeah. Do bears ever go nocturnal when they're overhunted?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the big bears are.
Yeah.
It doesn't take them long to figure out you're around. One trip in.
Yeah. And they realize you're there when it's daylight out, right? I got you.
That's right, and they don't come in. They do, like I said, a big bear is different than an average bear, just like a mature buck is different than a yearling spike. They're a lot smarter. They figure you out real quickly, real fast, and they don't. They will not come in when you're there. Now they'll come in at dark when you're there,
right?
Which can be real scary.
Yeah, because you got to get out of there.
You got to get out of there. Yeah, I tell people, it's fun in there, and you think you're safe in a tree. You're not. They can climb up a tree faster than you can say it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had many of them come up at me, not so much to bite me, although a couple I thought wanted to sink their teeth into my foot. But they're curious. They don't know what you are.
Right. They are a curious animal, and they're a shy animal. I feel like I should, be paying you for this.
Hey, yeah, listen, here's my address.
Send that check to Bill Vaznis.
Send the check, sure. I'll put it to good use.
But it's guys like you that I could sit around a campfire, and I hope to share a campfire with you someday and just listen to all the things that you've learned through trial and error. It's an amazing life in the outdoors that you've had.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've had a lot of fun out there.
Back to bears. What advice do you have for someone looking for a bear outfitter? What are the questions we need to ask when we're booking that trip?
Well, you really have to go through a trial and error process. There are good outfitters out there. There are great outfitters, and like any other sport or business, there's a few cuckoos out there. But ask them if you're going to bow hunt, for example. Ask him if he's ever had bow hunters in camp.
Mm-hmm.
I was in one camp, the outfitter claimed to be a bow hunter himself, but he had the stand set up 40 and 50 yards from the bait pile. So obviously, he didn't know much about bows or bow hunting. You want to ask him what his not only his success rate, but what is the sex ratio of the bears he's been taking. If he's taken mostly sows, 100 pounds to 150 pounds, then there's probably not too many big boars out there. Big boars, although they're very smart, they're also the most likely bear killed over bait because they visit many bait sites. They're looking for sows in the springtime. That's when they rut. So ask him what the sex ratio is. If he's taken only sows, then there's not too many big boars left in the area. The area is, I would consider it overhunted for big bears. Ask about his experience with bait, whether he's how often has he baited, what his bait routines are, and from that, if he gives you enough detail, you can tell he knows what he's doing. If he cribs the bait for whether you're hunting with a bow or a muzzleloader from a tree stand or a pistol in some areas. Certainly not in Canada, but cribbing the bait forces the bear to enter the bait site in a broadside or a quartering away angle, which is really the only angle you should consider if you're shooting a bear with a primitive weapon. Ask him where he gets his guides. If he's had guides with him for years, that's a good sign. If he's picking them up at the local watering hole, that's not a good sign. If they're young kids, all they are is gophers. They're just putting bait out there. I hunted with a kid just this past year. He came into the bait site about an hour ahead of time and drove right up to the tree. And I had a bear sneaking around in the brush behind the bait. And I said, why are you coming in so early? And I'm using polite language here. He said, well, I want to get back. I want to get out of here before dark because the trail going back is kind of rough. I says, I really don't care what the trail is coming back. I got a bear in the back, and you spooked him off.
Yeah.
He said, that's all right. He'll be back tomorrow. Obviously, this kid didn't know anything about bears or bear hunting. He was just a gopher.
Yeah.
So ask him what the quality of his guides are. If they've been with him for a long time, that's a real good sign. Those are the big three things. Then references are good to ask for and good to contact, but generally an outfitter is only going to give you his most successful hunters. He's not going to give you the guy in camp that was disgruntled and left early for all kinds of reasons. But you got to be careful. Just because a guy left camp early doesn't mean that the outfitter is bad.
Right.
I've been in camp with guys, they all of a sudden think they're Davy Crockett, and they've never seen a bear before, but they know all about it. And they start telling the outfitter what to do instead of taking his advice. That's what you're paying him for.
Right.
I hunted with one guy that refused to go to this stand that was only being hit once every second or third day. And the guy said, listen, there's a big bear coming into this bait. If you're patient, you might see him and get a crack at him. But Stevie refused to do that. He wanted to go to a bait that was being hit every night and trashed, and guy says, listen, there's 1,000 cubs on that bait. But Stevie didn't listen. He went and sat on the bait where all the action seemed to be. And another guy in camp from another state took the bait that the guide first offered. He shot a 400-pound bear on that bait after sitting there for 3 nights.
Look at that.
Stevie did not get a bear. And when he left, he was pretty mad. And he badmouthed the outfitter locally. And that was too bad. Stevie obviously didn't know what he was talking about, didn't know what he was doing. He tried to guide the guide. Well, you asked earlier about mistakes you can make, and you try and guide the guide. If you don't have any bear hunting credentials yourself and start guiding the guide, you're usually looking for an unpunched tag at the end of the hunt.
Right, exactly. What about using hounds?
Hounds is exciting. It's another way of hunting bears where you can catch and release them. You've got to be in shape. I'm getting old in the long in the tooth, and I got a little bit of this. I got a platform underneath my chest here. I think it's my belly.
Little bookshelf.
A little bookshelf, you know. And when you go after them with dogs, you're going to run. You're going to be in the woods a lot, and it's going to be an enduring hunt. Chasing those hounds back and forth, trying to catch up to them. Is very exciting. It's very, very demanding on your body.
Yeah.
You're going to be pooped at the end of the day, and you're going to wonder how these guys do it day after day.
Yeah.
Hunting with hounds is very exciting. The first time I hunted with hounds, I thought, and this guy's hounds also chase mountain lions, and I thought, well, these dogs have got to be vicious. When you think about it, you got a 100-pound dog.
Yeah.
Going after a 200-pound bear or a 300-pound bear or a mountain lion. These dogs have got to be rough and tough. I got in the front cab of the pickup, and Brannon picked up his dog and threw it in the front seat with me. I almost went out the window.
Right.
I thought, this dog's going to chew me up. But it was a big pansy. He just sat there and licked my hand and put his head on my lap. I said, oh, my God, what kind of dog we got here?
Yeah, right.
I said, is he going to do battle with a bear? He says, you wait, this is my best dog.
Yeah, he knows. He turned it on when he needed to turn it on, right?
Yeah. Dogs chase bears like dogs chase cats. It's just it comes natural to them.
What are some of the best places to hunt black bear?
Canada, the provinces that border the U.S. are just teeming with bears. There's bears everywhere. British Columbia, Alberta. Alberta's got a great outfitting business. The bears are well managed. and there's a lot of big ones. I put 2 or 3 in the book from Alberta alone, and they have a 2-bear limit. Saskatchewan, a lot of bears, a lot of color-phased bears in Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, and British Columbia. Western Canada has got a lot of off-color bears. Manitoba is very good. They're another province that's well managed. The bear biologists know what they're doing, and they're maintaining a great population of big, big bears up there. And it's wild. You go in the northern parts of these provinces, it's wild. It's wild, wild country. You get off the beaten path up there, you could walk 100 miles before you come even to a logging road.
I'm so happy that still exists on this planet. I love it.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely wild country. You know, the only people you see up there are the occasional Indians that they'll do some fishing or hunting themselves. Quebec is a great province. They're advertising heavily. They want hunters to come up to experience the French experience, the Quebecois. It's great hunting up there. Ontario has probably got more book bears registered in the Pope and Young record books than any other province. But unfortunately, politics stuck its ugly face in there several years ago, and they canceled the spring hunt. You can hunt them in the fall, however, when the bears are actually heavier. It's not a bad place to go. I would not hesitate to go to Ontario on a fall bear hunt. You can double them up with a moose hunt. You go up there, hunt moose, and take a whack at a bear if you see one. The biggest bears on the East Coast probably come from Newfoundland, the island of Newfoundland. I've seen some whoppers up there. Bear I took with a bow several years ago, I think still ranks number 2 taken with a bow. And it's a beautiful bear. In fact, I'm looking at him right now. I got him full mounted in my living room. He is not the biggest bear I saw up there.
Wow.
I saw several bears outweighed this one by hundreds of pounds. The biggest bear I ever saw in the wild I saw in Newfoundland. My guess, it weighs 675 pounds on the pad. And the outfitter filmed it after I left and thought it was 7 1/4. I said, "Oh, good grief, you're going to beat me up for 50 pounds."
Right.
They're huge. They're huge. In fact, Mahoney, the bear biologist, did a lengthy study. They thought they might have had a separate subspecies of bears on the island because they are considerably bigger by age than bears on the mainland. And what's nice about Newfoundland is that you can hunt caribou and moose at the same time. In fact, you can go up there and try and get the Triple Crown: a moose, a Canada moose, a caribou, and a big black bear. And New Brunswick has also got a lot of bears. It's easier to get to because you can drive up through Maine. There's big bears up there that I've never seen a human being before. Well, the bear I shot this year with a muzzleloader was in New Brunswick.
Is that right?
Okay, the states in Canada, the provinces that border Canada, have got the best bear hunting. You go further north, northern Quebec, way up near Kuujjuaq. I've seen bears up there, but they're not big. Same with the Yukon. I've never hunted the Yukon for bears, but they're generally quite small because they have a slower growing season. They spend more time hibernating than they do actually out and about walking and feeding and whatever. And Northwest Territories, you've got grizzlies up there, but the black bears are generally smaller. You don't need to go that far north.
Right. Well, you're saying the bordering areas are the best.
Yeah. A sleeper province is Nova Scotia. They have very few bear hunters, but they've got great bear hunting. So, yeah, those states bordering Canada are great. They're great for bow hunting. And generally the provinces take good care of the bears. They're well managed. The biologists know what they're doing. And generally politics does not stick its ugly face except in Ontario.
Yeah.
The western states, great bear hunting. Montana, Washington State, Idaho, all great places for bears, and there are some whoppers out there. A sleeper on the West Coast is California. California allows dog hunting. You cannot hunt. You have to go through an outfitter. I'm pretty sure. I have to check on that. But California's got some huge bears, and dog hunting is very popular out there. A friend of mine has taken 3 or 4 bears in the top 10 with dogs.
In California. Look at that.
California, yeah. Colorado's got good bears. Arizona. The thing to do is to get a hold of the Fish and Game Department for these different states. You can go online and check them real fast and get a hold of their regs. And the mistake many people make is that they don't talk to the bear biologist. These guys love to talk to hunters. Get them on the phone or her on the phone and yak it up. Find out where the bears are, how big the bears are, what the weights are, where the bigger bears seem to be coming from, what the most popular methods are. Some allow baiting, some don't. Some allow dogs, some don't. Generally, they all allow spot and stalk, which can be very exciting with a bow or muzzleloader.
Right.
And in the east, Maine has got a lot of bears. They're generally small, 150 to 200 pounds, but there is the occasional whopper that comes out of there. My home state of New York has got lots of bears. The bear population is actually expanding through the Finger Lakes region, coming up from Pennsylvania and out of New Jersey. And the Adirondacks, which is the thumb of upstate New York, is crawling with big bears.
Right. How about Wisconsin and Michigan for their Upper Peninsula?
Those are all great bear hunting states, too. If you pick up a copy of Bear Hunting Magazine, you'll see what some of the better outfitters advertise with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a way to, if you want to book a hunt, to get in there and start looking around and see what these guys are offering and what their prices are. Generally, the more you pay, the better the hunt.
Right.
If you're going to give a guy, $200 for a bear hunt, he's probably going to throw a bag of donuts out behind your cabin and say, "I'll see you next Saturday."
Or take you out near the dumpster, right?
Yeah, or take you out to the dumpster. Or hunt behind the dumpster.
I've heard these stories before where they drove up to the dumpster and there's people taking pictures and they want you to shoot one. I no thanks.
Yeah, and you don't want to eat a bear that's been hanging around dumpsters. Bears carry a disease like pigs do, and it's trichinosis.
Yeah, the trichinosis. Yeah. Can you share a favorite black bear recipe?
If you marinate them, I've marinated them in milk and beer, but any of the marinating sauces are pretty good, actually. Marinate them and then grill them and keep them on the tender side, on the rare side. You got to cook them all the way through. You don't want it raw. I like my beef raw. I like to walk the cow through a warm room and then eat it.
Right. You don't want to do that with pork, though. Well, bear is you handle it like pork, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You handle it like pork. If Bear Hunting Magazine, we carry a recipe every issue.
All right.
There's a lot of good ones in there. I don't want to steal Lori's ideas. So
I could talk all day with you. I'd love to hunt with you. Let's before we let you go, let's compare spring and fall bear hunting and what someone should consider.
Spring bear hunts are the most common for bow hunters because it's the spring season. There's not much else doing unless you like to turkey hunt. And personally, I'd rather drag a 300-pound bear of the woods than a 20-pound tom.
Right.
And they're a little bit more fun to hunt, I think. But spring, the bears are generally lighter in weight, and their coats, unless you catch them right out of hibernation, are not as thick and fluffy. They don't have the same amount of underfur that they have when they go into hibernation, which is in the fall. Generally, the big boars come out first from hibernation, then the immature boars, the 2.5-year-olds, and then the immature sows come out, and the last ones who emerge from the denning period are sows with cubs. They don't travel too far from the area. So if you really want a big bear, the earlier you go, sometimes the better it is. You got to talk to the outfitter and ask him when he thinks the best time is. But generally, springtime, the bears are not as heavy, and you got to be careful. The longer you go into the spring, like you're hunting end of May, June, the coats can be rubbed, which is they actually take the underfur and the fur right off the animal.
Yeah.
It looks very splotchy. In the fall, however, the bears are a lot bigger. They can put on 150 pounds. During the summer, they can put on up to 3 to 5 pounds a day. They go through a period called hyperphagia where they eat everything. The berries are out there, the beech nuts have fallen, the grapes have fallen, the apples are in the trees. They're gorging themselves, getting ready for hibernation, and they eat all day long. And they'll eat right up, even if there's snow on the ground. If there's a bumper crop of beech nuts or acorns up on the upper ridges, they'll be up there gorging themselves even through a foot of snow, as long as that's available. When the food is no longer around in plentiful amounts, then they go into a denning period. But that's if you're looking for a heavy bear, and a trophy bear depends. The eye is on the beholder. The eye is in the beholder. There, help me out with that phrase.
The eye is in the beholder.
Yeah, something like that. Well, thanks.
It's in the eye of the beholder. That's
yes.
All. Yes.
That's what I said.
Yes.
That's what I said.
In the beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
Yes.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some guys want a heavy bear. Some guys want a bear with a beautiful coat so they can make a bear rug. And some guys want the skull size. The skull size doesn't change minimally between spring and fall. The coats, there's a difference in the coats, and there's definitely a difference in the weights.
Right.
A bear can lose up to a third of its weight through the denning period. So you get a 300-pound bear during the day. They're out feeding everywhere. So if you want a fall bear, you go to the food, and which makes baiting a little difficult because if you got a bag of donuts out there and there's an apple orchard nearby, you're not going to find him messing around with your donuts. He's going to be in the apple orchard or on the acorn, on a bench full of acorns.
Right. Or if there's water nearby, they'll be grabbing the salmon.
Yes.
Does that affect the meat taste? Fall or spring bear?
I guess so. There's not as much fat in there. You don't want to eat the fat on a bear anyways. You want to trim it all away if you can. There's no salmon here in the east where they'll go after the fish. West Coast, British Columbia is noted for up near Bella Coola for having big bears because they feast on the salmon, especially the grizzly bears. The grizzly bears up there. Some of the biggest bears up there in Canada are found in British Columbia near these salmon streams, as you know. Generally, at least here in the east, the bears don't go after the fish as often. There may be sucker runs or walleye runs in the spring, but it's not generally noted for a place to go bear hunting. But yeah, what they eat does affect how they taste, just like any other animal. If you go out in the west and hunt mule deer that are eating sage, they're going to taste like sage. If you take a white-tailed buck that's been feeding on corn, he's going to taste a lot better than a mule deer feeding on sage. The bears that feed in dumpsters, I wouldn't touch. Bears that feed off human garbage, and I would not consider them high on the taste test.
The garbage eaters.
The garbage eaters. I'll tell you a story.
It's like eating a raccoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
Yeah.
With them. So what they do eat that can affect the taste. A young bear tastes a lot better than an old torn up boar. I shot a small bear in Manitoba several years ago, and we ate it in camp. We made a bear stew out of it. Oh.
Yeah, delicious.
It was delicious. With onions, and we asked for a recipe there, with carrots and potatoes and onions and chopped up bear meat. Braise it first and throw it in the pot. Ugh. Bear stew is my favorite way of eating a bear. We're planning a hunt this spring.
Maybe I'll join you.
Hey, that would be great.
All right.
Listen, what I can do is I can put you on the tree near the bait, and we'll put honey in your pockets and some dead chicken in your pockets.
Apple in my mouth, I'll be all set.
Yeah, if a big bear comes in, we'll shoot it right away. If it's a smaller one, we'll let it gnaw on you for a while, and your screams should bring in a bigger one.
See, now that's the expertise that we're looking for, and I would do that for you, Bill Vaznis.
Hey, thank you. I'll get some pictures. We'll make you more famous than you already are.
There you go. Bill, thanks so much, and continued success.
Hey, listen, thanks a lot. I've done a lot of these interviews before, and you're the most polished one I've ever had.
Thank you.
Really, you've done a lot of homework, and you knew what the hell to ask me.
Talking with guys like you, I just take these little gems of advice that you folks give me, and I store them away. Makes me a better hunter, and I appreciate it.
Well, thanks.